Okay, well, I have 10:01, so let's get started. I would like to welcome you to the first of the Gulf Coast Gardening Online series. This is a great series that we're looking forward to because this is bringing together the knowledge and expertise of at least 12 horticulture agents and specialists from the Gulf Coast region. So, from Montgomery County down to Nueces and Port Aransas and over to Fort Bend and east over to the Beaumont area. So, um, we've got a lot of information that we will be able to disseminate to you over the next at least 3 months. So stay tuned. So as you can see, for the month of June, my name's Paul Winski. I am the horticulture agent here in Harris County. Next week, we will have Stephen Yannick, who is a program specialist. He will be talking on olives on the Texas Gulf Coast. The following week will be Skip Richter from Brazos County. He will be speaking about gardening in containers. And to close out the month of June, we will have turf irrigation audit by Michael Potter, who is up in our Montgomery County office. So anything horticulture, we will be covering it. So I think it's going to be a great series, and we're looking forward to getting this started. Before we get started, just a few things. Please make sure you mute your microphones. And if you don't mind, please also turn off the video, off your video, because this way everything will stream a lot easier. So if you have your video camera on, please turn it off. If you have questions, you can pose them in the question section. I will have a moderator helping me out, so he will be looking for questions. He may be able to answer them right away. He may answer in text, or if it's something that needs to be posed, he will let me know. So Skip will be doing that. You will also receive a survey later on today, and we would appreciate you taking the time to go ahead and do that. And I believe this presentation is being recorded. So just to let you know, the record button is on. We will save it, and you will also receive a link to where you can view this in the future. So with that said, I think we are ready to get started. So today's topic is annuals for the summer heat. And when we talk about annuals, just a little bit of botany behind it. Annuals live only one growing season. So they do grow, they flower, they produce seed, and they complete their life cycle. Down here in Texas, annuals don't always follow that because of our long growing season. So we can get quite a bit of durability, quite a bit of time out of annuals here in the Gulf Coast. They are very versatile. They're relatively inexpensive. You can buy them in flats depending on the size. So it allows you to get color into the garden inexpensively. Benefits, I like to call annuals the sort of the bling of the garden. Everybody wants color. It provides instant color. You'll have we have cool season annuals that we can use down here. We've got our heat annuals, which we're going to talk about. There's a lot of different colors and textures that are available, heights and forms, cascading, upright. Some annuals we're not growing for the flowers, but we're growing for their foliage. So that works out extremely well also. They allow you to fill some spaces until your permanent plants are installed. So if you've got a new landscape that's been installed and you've got some bare spots, you can put some annuals in there to fill that in until the plants have established. They work very well together with perennials. So we can extend those perennial beds where we can have continuous color, because the one thing you want to think about is the more flowers you have, you can bring the pollinators in, you can bring in the beneficial insects. And these plants, along with the perennials, provide pollen and nectar, which are food sources for the pollinators and also for the beneficial insects. If you do bulbs, our cool season annuals you can plant over top, and then the bulbs can pop up through them, so you've got a nice look there. And then with their versatility, you can use them in planters, window boxes, hanging baskets, however you want to use them, combination planters. So overall, they work extremely well together, and give you a lot of opportunities and options. So um, before, let's see here. Here we go. I've got a quick question for you now. All right, we're going to use this poll everywhere. What is your favorite annual for the summer heat? We'll get your input. So if you've got your phone, text Paul Winski 227 to 37607. It'll give you a message back saying you are in, and then type in the name of your favorite annual that you like for the summer heat. And the name will pop up. I'm not doing a word cloud. The name's going to pop up so we can have an idea of maybe what some of your favorite annuals are for the summer heat. So again, to text to 37607, and then in the text put Paul Winski 227, and you'll get a confirmation. And then we should start to see some words pop up here. This does work because it is live. I tested it before. So let's give it a minute or two just to see how what you guys think are your favorite annuals for the summer heat. Do we have any takers? Here we go. Vinca. Awesome. Portulaca. Great. Here we go. Sunflowers. Okay. I think you guys could give this talk. Angelonia. We're rolling now. Marigolds. Salvias. Very versatile. Coreopsis. Okay. Zinnias. You guys got the hang of this. Excellent job. Excellent job. Okay. So of all of those, Coreopsis is normally a perennial. But actually, I am going to touch on all the plants that you've got listed there except the Coreopsis. So great job. So thank you for that input and that feedback. So let me lock this here. And then let's move on. So our first plant, Angelonia. Okay. Often called the summer snapdragon. Very upright habit. These spikes can be anywhere from 10 to say 14 or 16 inches, depending on the variety. You can see the Texas Superstar logo up here. The Serena series is a Texas Superstar, and Texas Superstars are plants that have been tested throughout the state of Texas that perform well, and they really are can't miss plants to use in the garden. So Angelonia, there's a Serena series, there's a Serenita series. Here's the Serenita. In our display gardens that when we were at Bear Creek, this is a purple variety. So color ranges are dark purples, lavenders, pinks, and whites, and they give you that nice upright habit. So I would say these are probably going to be in the mid section of the bed. Some of the varieties are tall enough that you could even use them further back in the bed. Caladiums provide that nice tropical look. So we have the fancy leaf types, which prefer the shade. All right, the foliage is going to be a little bit larger, and the plants are going to be a bit taller. The strap leaf ones are for full sun. These are going to be a little bit shorter in their growth, and the color combinations are with all of them: greens, pinks, reds, watermelon colors. So they do extremely well, and they thrive about this time on. From June on is when these plants really come into play. This is one of our trials that we did early on, and this was in full sun. So we worked with the breeder, and they supplied us both strap and fancy leaf varieties. And the fancy leaves did well even in the full sun. The one thing I would caution is that if you use fancy leaves in full sun, the color intensity isn't going to be as strong or as intense as it is when they are grown in the shade. So they will perform well. They will be taller than the strap leaf varieties, but they give you that great tropical look. And as I mentioned earlier, it's not always about the flowers. The foliage can provide quite a bit of color, both in the shade and in the sun. Here's another one just for the foliage. This is coleus. This is another trial that we did. And you can see the intensity and the texture that coleus provides. So the other thing we are starting to see is the varieties. A lot of varieties now are they're not seed varieties. They come from cuttings. And so it allows them. They don't set flowers, which you don't have to go out and deadhead or remove. So they just stay in this vegetative state. Height on some of these varieties can get about 2.5 to 3 feet. Other varieties, you can have creeping or cascading forms. So coleus are just very versatile for both the sun and the shade. And here's some close-ups of just the colors and textures that these plants can provide. So even in these work extremely well in combination planters. So as possibly either fillers or thrillers, but great colors, great textures all around. Portulaca, a recent addition to the Texas Superstar. I love these plants. Very low growing, so you're going to use this in the front of the bed. They will work well as a hanging basket. The one knock on them, or it's not on the plant, but it's how a lot of the stores merchandise these, is they will keep them in the shade. And if they're in the shade, flowers don't open. So we want to make sure that this is definitely a full sun plant. And you can see that nice delicate flower. It almost looks like a single type rose. You can see the nice contrast. The colors just really become electric in the full sun. So Portulaca is a great plant to use for the summer heat. Next up, Lantana. And breeding in Lantana has really gone through the roof here lately. We looked at 17 different varieties when we did a trial. These banditos on the right were very tight, compact. They weren't your typical cascading or aggressively growing plant. Nice and compact, so you could use it in the front of the bed. Where on the other side, we still had the ones that perform extremely well in the landscape if you've got to cover a large area. These can get about 2 to 3 feet tall and at least 3 to 4 feet wide. The one thing I like about these Lantana is their colors. Usually in the center, they will open one color, and as they mature, they will, in most cases, darken. So you get a lot of different color presentations, and they work really well hand in hand. Combinations, hanging baskets, and just in the landscape. And I've seen some of these, they just really perennialize. They'll get woody stems, and it almost becomes a shrub down here because if we have a mild winter, they will just continue to perform throughout the season. The one thing breeders are also doing is they're trying to get away from, they're trying to get more sterile flower production on these. So they don't set seed, so they will have continuous flower production. Marigolds, Tagetes erecta. So this is the Tola variety, the African marigold. So these are going to top out at say 12 to 14 inches, some even a little taller. You could use it as a cut flower if you wanted. But these flower heads, you've got a good variety if those flower heads are nice and tight. When it rains, you want to see the water run off of it. You don't want to see the water get trapped inside that flower. If the water gets trapped inside that flower, you're going to have disease issues and the plant's going to struggle. And then we've also got the compact varieties, the mounding forms. These are the African varieties, or I'm sorry, the French varieties. And so this is Tagetes patula. Nice compact habit, probably used in the front of the bed. And these will produce flowers over the entire head, over the entire mound of the plant. Okay. Skip, any questions that we need to address?
I don't see any questions, but we've had some raised hands. So if you have a question, you can type it into the chat, and Paul will try to answer those as we get toward the end of the program.
Okay, sounds good. We will continue then. So Pentas, again, another superstar recently this year. Pentas are great through the heat of the summer. The other thing I like about them is there's a lot of diversity in this genus with regard to plant form and habit. There's even cascading forms that are out there now. You can have nice, tight, compact ones that are about 6 inches tall, and you can have larger varieties that reach, say, 12 to 16 inches. So colors, whites, pinks, lavenders, there's even bicolor varieties out there. The other thing that's great is these plants bring in the pollinators and they bring in the beneficial insects. So butterflies, moths, you name it, they are on these plants, making sure that, finding a food source, but they are continuous color throughout the entire summer season. So Pentas, really good, strong plant to have in the landscape. Sunflower, okay, this was on the list too when we started out. You have your typical varieties. You've got dwarf ones with the large flowers. You can have 6 to 8 foot varieties also with the extremely 8 inches across flowers. The one I want to bring your attention to, though, there's a new variety out there called Sunfinity. And this is a ever blooming or nonstop blooming. The flowers are about, I'd say, 4 to 6 inches across. And this will continually put out new shoots and it will continually bloom. In the landscape, probably about 4 feet tall by 4 feet wide. So this is going to be a large annual as it gets established. But it's one that it gives you that sunflower look, but it's a completely different look and different habit for this sunflower. So this is one, if you see it, give it a shot because it is something new and different, and it's a interesting look for sunflowers in general. Gomphrena, also a Texas superstar. So you can see it's a trend here. A lot of these plants, if they're going to hold up in the heat, they're going to make it into the Texas Superstar program. And these are they're unique. They sort of got this little satellite-looking flower. If you've ever touched them, they're dry. It feels like they're dried already, like a bracteantha. But they just bloom nonstop. Color range can be fuchsia, white, purples, pinks, and I don't see these being planted in large drifts, but this image gives you a good idea of how they would be used. Just the way they pop up throughout the bed. It adds some nice texture. It adds some nice color. It adds depth to the landscape. So I would not see these being planted in mass, but in pockets, and just let them sort of pop up and ramble through the bed or through the landscape. So that is Gomphrena. Zinnias, Texas Superstar, the Zaharas were on that list. I love these because they're nice and compact. You don't have to deadhead them. So as the new growth comes up, the old flower sort of dies off. So these plants, we use the term they bury their dead. The older flowers are down in there, the new flowers come up, and it's just a continuous bloom. So they do extremely well. Colors are, the color range is out there from whites to pinks to reds, but then you've also got singles and doubles, so you can have a different look, different texture with that flower production. Vinca, the one I would always recommend is the Cora series, and the Cora series is a Texas superstar. Why that is the Coras are bred for resistance to aerial Phytophthora, which was always an issue when, especially down here with our humidity and our heavy rains, our large volumes of rain we can have. They would get that aerial Phytophthora and just melt away. They would die off. The Coras are resistant to that, and keep your eye out because I've seen in the garden series there's a new version of the Coras called XDR, which is like anything else. These strains of Phytophthora will mutate, and so Vinca, the Cora XDR, are resistant to more strains of the aerial Phytophthora. So you're going to get even more disease resistance. The plants are going to perform much better. So Vincas, and again, upright habits, and I would say on average about a foot tall and maybe 12 to 18 inches wide. But then the Coras are also, they have a cascading series. So maybe about 8 to 10 inches tall, but they're going to be wider, maybe 2 feet wide. So whether in hanging baskets, combination planters, or in the front of a bed, they perform extremely well and have some great colors to them. Impatiens. Now, Impatiens, there's a story behind Impatiens. At one time, Impatiens was probably one of the top 3 bedding plants in the industry. Performs well in the heat, performs well in the shade, and gives you that color. Beautiful flowers over the entire plant. But then I'd say about 8-9 years ago, we had issues with Impatiens downy mildew. And this basically wiped out the Impatiens market. You can see this picture here where I've got the arrow. This is what Impatiens downy mildew does to series or varieties that aren't resistant. So what happens? The breeders, the breeding companies start focusing on this. And now there are 2 series out on the market. And I know Beacon is out. I've seen it here. I don't know if I've seen Amara yet, but these are 2 varieties, or 2 series, I would say, that are resistant to Impatiens downy mildew. So if you love Impatiens and you've missed them because you haven't been able to find them, or you've had them dying off, you've had issues, look for either the Beacon series or the Amaras. Give them a try. Just remember, Impatiens, even though you grow them in the shade, they like a lot of water. So they are going to be water hogs, but they're great look, great flower production, and perform extremely well. So again, Beacons or Amaras, if you like Impatiens for the sun, look for those 2 series. Sweet potato vine, Ipomea, again, something that loves the heat, works well in the shade or the sun, and gives you color and texture. So it's a great plant that will allow, has a lot of versatility. Whether you're using it in the landscape, it's going to be towards the front of the bed, maybe cascading over the edges. If you're going to use it in combination planters, it's a great spiller. But there are a lot of different colors and textures now that Ipomea provides to the landscape. Begonias, again, another one great for the heat. Depending on your condition, begonias will do well in full sun. They'll also do well in the shade. The Texas Superstar logo is up here because the Whopper series is a Texas Superstar. And this is, we're seeing a trend with the Whoppers and big series and things like that, where we've got large foliage and large flowers. They do well in the landscape, but they also do extremely well just in large planters, and they are just covered with flowers. The one thing I will say is if you're buying, say you have the bronze type foliage or the maroon type foliage begonia, the more sun it gets, the darker that foliage will get. If it's in the shade, it's going to look more green. But if you can get it some sunlight and get it in the full sun, that bronze foliage is going to get even darker. So the degree of sun is going to help with the bronze foliage begonias. Salvia, summer jewels. This is a coccinia. And this is in our display garden. This was, I think, last summer. And this is just nonstop blooms throughout the entire summer. Butterflies, hummingbirds coming to it. The great thing about this is the white, but the breeder, they've got a red, they've got a pink, and now they also have a lavender. And the interesting thing is they're very uniform. The flower production is spot on with all of these. And each of these colors are All-American selection winners. So there are 4 colors in this series, and all 4 colors are All-American selection winners. So that's really a tribute to the company in developing this line that blooms entire summer, full sun, and it doesn't matter whether you grow just one color or you mix those colors. There is uniformity in the habit and the flower production. I think I'm coming towards the end here. Scaevola, fan flower. This is one that just thrives in the heat. It's native to Australia, so even though we're much more humid and moist than maybe what parts of Australia are, this plant does extremely well. Has an upright habit, more and also more of a cascading, so it's going to spread wider than it is taller. Does extremely well in hanging baskets. You can see here the white one is right at the edge, so you can see it cascading over the edge of the bed. And then we also have pinks, and that fan flower name comes from the way that flower looks. It's sort of as a open fan semicircle with the petals coming off. So Scaevola, if you have not used it, give it a try, because I think you'll be really surprised at how well it holds up in the heat of the summer. All right. So with that, I think we're right on time, looking good. So any questions or comments?
Paul, we had a question from Larry, who says that a lot of leaf-footed bugs are on his Pentas this year, and they were easy to find and get rid of, but he's wondering if would it be a good trap crop for leaf-footed bugs?
That's a great observation. When we had them, we had about a dozen varieties. I don't remember seeing any leaf-footed bugs on them. So I would say at this point, Larry, give it a shot. If it seems like they're, for whatever reason, they're attracted to them. It does sound like, at least in this case, that it would work as great as a trap crop.
Okay, yeah, I have not seen that either. That's interesting. So Valerie asks, how can we give our annuals a good start when planting in the heat of summer?
A great question. Well, just like even in the spring, or if you're doing fall, prepare that bed the way you normally would, whether you amend with compost, whatever you're comfortable with, and how you're successful, say in the spring or cool season. Prepare that bed. A lot of times what you're going to see is for the summer plants now, if you start walking the garden centers, the plants are going to be in larger pots, which is an advantage. So you may not see as many, say, 6-packs as you would early spring. You're going to see larger sized plants. So maybe starting with a 3.5-inch or a 4-inch or a quart, putting that in, it's going to have a more of a robust root system. And so it will be able to handle some of the stress that it's going to face. And then the other thing is, when you do water them in, give them a good, healthy drink when you get them started, but then allow that soil to dry out a little bit in between waterings. Don't go out every day and just I'm watering. Um, it's not good for the root system. It's not allowing those roots to get out into the soil. Let it dry a little bit, and be aware of what's going on with the weather. If you're getting a lot of rain, the plant's going to be fine. But I always like infrequent deep waterings. I just put some stuff in on when was it, Saturday, watered everything in, and I probably will go back out this afternoon or later today and give them another drink. So Saturday, Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, it's been 4 days and they're doing fine. We got a little bit of rain, and so look at the plant. The plant's going to tell you when it's thirsty. Don't just not give it water just because it makes you feel good. A lot of time the plant doesn't need all that water, and you end up with disease issues later on.
Okay, I want to remind everybody that in the chat, we've been posting superstar links to these plants and also some resources, including from other states like Florida Extension, Louisiana Extension, Mississippi Extension. So you can scroll back and have those links. We have a question, Paul, from Dovey, that she has black and orange grasshoppers eating some of the leaves. Have you ever heard of those, Paul? And
yeah.
what did she do to get them out? I can tell you this, that Harvey flood for how many weeks did not get them out. So
yes. They are called lubbers, Lubbers. I never knew of lubbers until I took this position with Extension, and they would just swarm the Bear Creek beds. And honestly, we would step on them. We would, try to get them. I don't know if there's anything that you can use to really get them under control. I know the 1 year Skip, do you remember the name of the product that you put out to try to get them under control at the early stages?
It was a biological called nolobate, that's the disease of grasshoppers.
Yes. So this bait, they would feed on it, but you need to get that out at the young stage, because once they mature, that bait doesn't work as well. And so they ingest it, and it affects their stomachs, and then they die off. That is the only product that I am aware of. Like I said, the master gardeners, I think we should have charged a nickel for each one they would catch, but we probably would have went broke because there were so many out in that garden. So they are a challenge, that's for sure.
That's true. I can tell you when they first hatch out, they're in a little herd of nymphs without wings, and it's easy to spray a few there than to chase around individual adults all over the garden. Paul, we had a question from Mariana. Which ones can be edibles? Is there a trustable research already on this topic? Mariana, you may want to unmute and kind of explain what you're talking about. I think you're talking about the flowers. So Paul, do you have any comment on that?
Yeah, with the edible flowers, in all the years I've been in, I've never looked at really the edible side of it. I know nasturtiums, pansies, violas, things like that are edible, and I'm sure there's probably information out there on edible flowers, but that really just hasn't been a focus for me as I'm evaluating. I'm looking at how well these are going to perform. Not only can the greenhouses produce them efficiently and effectively, how well they work in the landscape for the green industry, but then ultimately how well they work for the end consumer, the home gardener. So they are. I've always been looking at that side, and not much with regard to the, I guess, edibleness of the flowers.
Okay. Debbie is dealing with aphids on her annuals. What do you recommend?
Hopefully if you've got a good mix of flowers, and hopefully you've got some beneficials in there that are working on them, a soap, an insecticidal soap or a summer oil would work well. The one thing that aphids don't lay eggs. They're all females, and they're all popping out more females, up to 8 to 10 a day on a regular basis. So your numbers can go up pretty quickly. And the other unique thing is if the aphids have a sense that they are under attack or there are problems, they will basically play possum. They will drop off the plant, burrow into the soil, hide until the threat is gone, and then they'll come and crawl back up into that plant. So I would say, depending on what you're comfortable using, a product that has imidacloprid, which is a systemic, you can drench that around the plant. It will take it up and travel through the plant, and it also does a good job on getting the aphids under control. So, a lot of it depends on what you're comfortable with. A systemic, the soaps and the oils are a little bit softer. Again, make sure you read the labels on any of these products before you apply them.
Okay, I'm not seeing any additional questions. If you have any, this is your chance to ask.
Okay. Well, if that is the case, just to wrap things up, again, you will be receiving a survey, a link to a survey. So please complete that, since this is the first one for the Gulf Coast Gardening Online series. We'd love your feedback. And hopefully you can still see my screen. Next up, next week at 10 a.m., we're going to be talking about olives. So Stephen Yannick, our program specialist, will be bringing that information to you. So again, thank you for joining us, and you guys have a good rest of the week, and come back next week for our next talk. So have a great day.